Well, hey guys, how are you doing this afternoon? It's Lisa K. Crawford here with you. Hope everybody is off to the start of a wonderful weekend. And today we are going to talk a little bit about agents. Yes, special agents. Asking the question, is your realtor a special agent? So we'll try to answer that question for you today, talking some about agency and agency law. We have to take a little bit of that into account as we talk about this. I told you when I was on last time that I had a friend who said, look, Lisa, you should really take people through the entire scenario, everything from A to Z, how to select a realtor, how to understand the relationship you have with that realtor as you start entering into contracts and agreements, listing agreements and contracts. What does that all entail? And so this is my effort to do some of that heavy lifting and to answer some of those questions so you have a little bit better background. Now, I see that my rock music acoustic background actually looks like it's getting a little bit louder, so I'm going to turn it down just a tad. I thought we put a little music in the background as we go through some of this. I definitely don't see how it can hurt on a Friday, right? On a Friday afternoon. So let me go ahead and get ready to share my screen as we answer the question, is your agent a special agent? That's what we want to find out about. So here we go. Be patient as we switch over to the next screen. All right. Okay. And I believe I am sharing with you now, getting to the top of this presentation. And again, we're asking this question, is your realtor a special agent? And this is what we endeavor to answer during this hour. So we're going to start off letting you know that we're answering these questions from the perspective of a Florida licensed realtor, which I am. I'm a realtor with United Realty Group. I'm actually a broker associate, and we'll get into that too within this hour, the difference between a real estate associate and a real estate broker associate. But first, let's look at this. When you engage a specialist, they become your agent. Now, I'm talking in general. Think about it. If you engage someone to help you with life insurance, it's probably a life insurance agent. And when you hire that agent to help you get your policies in place, you now have hired a specialist, and that specialist becomes your agent in life insurance, right? And that's the same concept that applies to real estate. When you hire a realtor to assist you with your real estate transaction, you're hiring a specialist and they become your agent. So we still haven't answered that question though, is your realtor a special agent? So we will get to that. Agency law, where did this come from? Agency law has been around for a very, very long time. It goes back to English common law. You know how these days we have statutory law, and you can look up the code section for this and the code section for that law. Well, common law predates the kind of laws that we have now that are statutory and codified laws. Common law was made based on cases. The cases that were decided became the basis for the laws that were enforced. So agency goes way, way back to early English days. Next, under our current laws, we do have 3 types of agencies that are recognized. And this is where we answer the question, is your realtor a special agent? So the three type of agencies that we currently have under our laws are a special agent, a general agent, and a universal agent. And as you look at the basic definitions here, you're probably starting to get the impression that a realtor is, in fact, a special agent. Yes, exactly. Your realtor is a special agent. Why? Because it's an agency that has been created for one single transaction. So if you're selling a piece of property and you hire a realtor to assist you with that transaction, that is now your special agent for that single transaction. Now, what if you have 15 different parcels of property that you're selling? Again, you are still hiring that agent to sell each and every one of those parcels. And again, that's each one represents their own separate transaction. Doesn't change the nature of a relationship. Your realtor would still be a special agent. What are the other types? There's a general agent. A general agent is an agency that is ongoing but within specific guidelines. Earlier, we talked about that life insurance agent. Chances are you're going to have that life insurance agent for some time in your life. You're probably going to have a homeowners or automobile insurance policy agent. You're going to have other people that are going to be in your life, and they're going to be there for an extensive period of time, but that's all they're going to help you with. It's the specific thing that you engage them for, whether it's, again, like we said, some type of life insurance, some type of other auto policy, and there are, of course, other agencies out there. Attorneys are agents of sorts. Yes, they are. When you hire an attorney, you can hire an attorney to help you not only with a particular thing, but you might hire an attorney to help you with all of your legal affairs. And in a case like that, that attorney is a universal agent. The agency is ongoing and it covers all matters. Yes. So these are the very basic types of agencies that exist currently under Florida law: special agent, general agent, and universal agent. In the brokerage business, there is an agency, and that agency is between the principal and the real estate licensee. And we're going to have to break some of these definitions down. So, if you go out and get your real estate license, you are a real estate licensee, right? So the state that licensed you, or the board that is responsible for giving you that license, is the licensor or the licensing agency, and you are the licensee because you're the one receiving the real estate license. And so when you go to work for a real estate brokerage, you have created what? An agency. Yes, there is an agency between that real estate licensee and the broker of the real estate firm. Also, there is another agency that's taking place right within that same office. Every time you represent a customer, there's an agency between that customer, who's known as the principal, and the real estate agent. So agencies are layered, as you can see in business, and in real estate, there is some layering of agency that's going on. And we'll get more into this one. So number 4 says, in the brokerage business, the agency is between the principal and the real estate licensee. That is indeed an agency that exists. And remember, the principal is the customer, the person who's selling or buying the house, and then the licensee is the realtor. Okay, don't want to confuse anything there. Let's keep moving. Next, the real estate licensee, the realtor, is a universal agent of a designated broker for the brokerage firm, who is the agent representing the public. Clear, right? Totally clear. I know you got that. So let's go over that. The real estate licensee is an agent of the broker. Do you understand that? You cannot be a realtor without a broker. And if you work under a broker, you're an agent of the broker. And the type of agency it is a universal agent. Why is it universal? Because you can represent that broker in an ongoing basis, but within a specified parameter. And this parameter, real estate transactions. That's the only parameter under which you're granted this agency to act, right? So you're universal agent going back to our earlier definitions. And so the broker is the designated broker for that brokerage firm. And the broker is in fact the agent to the person who's selling their home, and that person is the principal. You get it? So the whole concept of agency is the principal and the agent. The principal is the customer in the real estate transaction, and the agent is the broker or the sub-agent working up under that broker, which is the real estate associate. I hope that's as clear as mud, guys. Now, I really do hope it's clear. It's a layered relationship, and I just want to do my best to try to explain it. Next, your real estate brokerage firm must have a licensed real estate broker to legally operate. And that broker is called a broker or a real estate broker. So you must understand that if there's a realtor running around helping you and they're not a broker, they're a real estate licensee, and they work for a broker. And that's the only way a real estate licensee can work. You have to have a broker. So a real estate brokerage firm must have a licensed real estate broker to legally operate. If that broker quit, if that broker is not working, if that broker is away from that brokerage for any period of time, those realtors that work there cannot legally act. They are legally, they cannot act, and the law will not recognize their actions as realtors without a broker. Let's keep going. A real estate broker associate, that's me, and I'm going to explain that, is someone who has met the requirements for a broker's license, but continues to operate under a licensed broker or owner operator. All right. And we will distinguish a real estate broker associate from a real estate sales associate. A real estate practitioner, or we earlier referred to it as a real estate licensee, someone who's been licensed by the state, a real estate practitioner licensee with a sales associate's license. That's what you have. That person must be employed by a broker to provide real estate services. I think we're saying the same thing many different ways now. You can be a realtor, but you can't be a realtor unless you work for a broker. Now, what if you are going back to the first part there in number 7? What if you're a real estate broker associate? That's someone who has met all the requirements to go out and open up their own brokerage, but they don't do that. Instead, they continue to work for someone who has opened up their own brokerage called a broker or owner operator. So you can be a broker and you can run your own brokerage. And if you own your own real estate and you hire a realtor to work within your company, because say you're a real estate developer and you own property, you can hire a realtor or a broker associate to come and assist you with your transactions in your own company. So there are some very interesting things in the real estate law that kind of expand what people can do. But these are the basics. You have a real estate broker associate and a real estate sales associate. When you first become a realtor, you have to start by being a real estate sales associate. After you hold that license for a period of time, usually 24 months, I believe in Florida, you can then apply to become a real estate broker. And if you don't actually open your brokerage and you continue to operate working for someone else, you will remain as a broker associate. Okay. Next. And of course, in a real estate transaction, you got to have a customer, right? So it's no good being a realtor or a real estate broker without customers to help. So the customer is the third party for whom some benefit is provided. And that usually means you're helping someone either buy or sell their property. And here is another type of status: designated sales associates. This is where two sales associates employed by the same firm represents the seller and the buyer in the same transaction as single agents. So you have one roof, the brokerage, you have two agents that work within that brokerage, and you have a buyer and a seller who have their own separate interests. And these agents that work under the brokerage are representing one of the parties each. They're single agents. One associate represents the seller while the other represents the buyer. This form of representation is only for commercial transactions, so it has to be non-residential, and the buyer and the seller must have assets of at least $1 million or more, and both parties, that being the buyer and the seller, must request single agency representation. And you might be thinking, well, what is single agency representation? We haven't defined that, so we'll get into that a little bit more. And so why is this important? Why are we talking about designated sales associates? Generally, people go out and buy their own they find their own realtors, either a buyer's agent, a seller's agent, but it doesn't always happen that those two persons are working under the same roof. And that's why we in Florida have this designated sales associate status. But there has to be certain parameters so that this can work. And what they are is what's listed here in number 9. Now, designated sales associate is different from dual agency. Under Florida law, it is illegal to represent the buyer and the seller in the same residential transaction. It is illegal. It's not illegal to be a dual agent in all states. So you have to go state by state if you want to know which states allow dual agency and which states don't allow it. Florida does not allow it. I'm glad that they don't allow it. I've had a situation where I was purchasing property years ago, and I actually was in a dual agent situation. And I realized what the problem is with dual agency. It's hard to represent two masters. You have the seller who is asking for A, B, C, and D, and you're having a buyer that says, I want you to represent me, and I don't want you to ever give up A, B, C, and D. The point is that a dual agency can create a situation of conflict because you have to equally promote both parties, both sides' interests. And that it doesn't happen that way. Maybe on paper or in a textbook, but in real life, there will be competing interests. And so for that reason, a lot of states said, forget about it. There will be no dual agency in our states. Now, earlier we talked about the designated sales associate situation where a buyer and a seller can be represented by single agents in the same brokerage. And so now we're going to define what is a single agent. Single agent relationship. The broker works for either the buyer or seller as their single agent. The disclosure must be made before or at the time of entering into a listing agreement or an agreement for representation or before showing the property, whichever occurs first. So, under the single agent relationship, there must be disclosure. That means that the realtor, the real estate agent, the real estate licensee must have a conversation with the customer to let them know that this is the nature of the relationship. It's referred to as a single agent relationship and must explain to them certain things about what that type of relationship entails or involves. And right here, it just states when you have to make those disclosures before or at the time of entering into an agreement or agreement for some type of representation or before showing a property. You have to do that. So definitely keep that in mind. And next, that says exaction broker, and I really apologize because that should say transaction broker. So I thought my dictation was on point. The other way you can be, you can represent someone. So you can be a single agent, right? As a real estate associate, you can be a single agent to a person, or you can be a transaction broker. That's what that's supposed to say. And this is a real estate licensee who provides limited representation to a buyer or seller, or both. So the transaction broker does not represent either party per se, right? In any type of fiduciary capacity. You don't represent them in any fiduciary or as a single agent capacity. There's limited confidentiality, and that licensee may represent both the buyer and seller in the same transaction. Why? Because you don't have full confidentiality. And it's said most of the time in the state of Florida, it's usually a transaction broker status. So if your realtor explains the type of relationship that you all have, more times than not, the realtor will engage you as a transaction broker, which means that they have limited fiduciary duties to you personally, but they represent the transaction and trying to get the deal done based on the party's interest. I hope that makes sense, and I do apologize for that typo. Fiduciary relationship, you heard me mention that earlier, that if a realtor is operating as a transaction broker, that is, they're representing the transaction, then the fiduciary relationship is very, very limited. And generally, a fiduciary relationship is one of trust and confidence between the real estate licensee and the seller or the buyer as the principal. The duties of agents require full confidentiality and obedience to all legal instructions, loyalty, and full disclosure. There may be liability for financial losses. So if there is full confidentiality in an agreement because you are a single agent, then you are going to have to be obedient to that principal, the customer, and follow all legal instructions. You're going to have to be loyal. You're going to have to provide that customer with full disclosure, everything that goes on with regard to their property, and let them know what information's coming to you. You can't pick and choose information. And if there may be also be liability financially for any losses in a relationship like this. So you have to make sure that you do what you're supposed to do as an agent in a situation like this. Four options for representing buyers and sellers. So you can be a transaction broker. We talked about that, where the agent mainly represents the transaction. You can be a single agent, where you represent either the buyer or the seller, and there is full confidentiality required. There is a high degree of fiduciary responsibility that goes along with being a single agent. And another type of relationship you can have with a buyer or seller, you can have a no brokerage relationship, and that is exactly what it says. You don't have any type of relationship, any type of duties of confidentiality. You don't have any disclosure duties to a person you don't have a brokerage relationship with. The thing is if you're going to help someone who you don't have any kind of relationship with, you are going to have them sign some written acknowledgement that they understand that you are not representing them in a fiduciary capacity. So that would be considered no brokerage relationship. That might be a situation where a realtor may run into someone on the street and say, hey, there's a house over here. Could you take me over there and help me see this house? I think I want to buy it. You don't have a relationship with that person, but you can still help them as a realtor under a no brokerage relationship agreement. And then we talked about the designated sales associate. It is distinguishable from dual agency, which is illegal in Florida. The designated sales associate status really works in a commercial type transaction where the buyer and seller both have assets of $1 million or more, and they're totally cool with having two realtors under the same brokerage represent either of them as single agents. Next, we are going to talk about under the circumstances under which these duties arise. So here we're only talking about residential sales. So when we talked about the type of agents that you can have, and we talked the type of obligations that they must provide you, depending on the type of transaction, an agreement, it only applies to residential sales. What are residential sales? Well, residential sales involve the sale of improved residential property of 4 units or fewer. So you could have a fourplex, a triplex, a duplex, or a single family property, and you're still dealing with residential sales. Residential sales also involves the unimproved property intended for 4 or fewer units. So if you have vacant land and you intend to build 4 or fewer units, we're dealing with residential property. Residential property involves C, the sale of agricultural properties of 10 or fewer acres. So if you're dealing with, again, land and you are buying or selling 10 or fewer acres, you are still dealing with a residential sales transaction. And D, residential sales involve leases with options to purchase all of or a portion of improved property of 4 or fewer residential units. And so in a situation like that, where you're leasing 4 or fewer residential units, that is, again, a residential transaction. And then there's another one that is here at the end, the disposition of business interests involving 4 or fewer residential units. So again, if it's 4 or fewer units and you're buying or selling, you are dealing with a residential sales transaction. And what do we contrast that with? That will be contrasted with a commercial transaction which is a whole nother type of transaction. Now, what are your duties as a real estate agent to your customer? Well, if you're not in any type of brokerage agreement with them and somebody on the street just pulls you aside and say, "Hey, show me this property, can you help me buy it?" and you don't have an agreement with them. So, as a non-broker, in a non-brokerage situation, you still have some basic obligations. You have to deal honestly and fairly with the person, pardon my typo. You have to account for all funds, and you have to disclose all known facts that affect the value of the residential property. Those are the basic duties. Now, I told you that in Florida, a lot of times these relationships automatically start off as a transaction broker relationship with the seller or buyer. And in cases like that, you have to deal honestly and fairly as well. You have to account for all funds, and you have to disclose all known facts that materially affect the value. And you notice that that same obligation is the same as the no brokerage relationship, the first three. But after that, you have even more duties as a transaction broker. The other thing is that you have to exercise skill, care, and diligence. You're required to do these things as a licensee. You have to show skill, care, and diligence in what you're doing. You have to present all offers to a seller in a timely manner. And if you're dealing with a buyer, if there are counter offers coming back from a seller to the buyer, you're presenting all offers in a timely manner. And to me, that means pronto. You don't wait 48 hours, 72 hours. You want to do it within the same 24-hour period and as soon as possible, depending on what kind of instructions you have received from the principal. You have limited confidentiality with regard to this type of relationship with your broker. And there are some additional terms that can be in this section as agreed upon between the principal and the agent. So look closely at this section, transaction broker. This is what you see a lot of in Florida. These are the duties of the real estate agent to their principal. That's the buyer or the seller. And these things need to be pointed out to you each time that you enter into a transaction by that realtor. They should be telling you, these are my obligations to you, and I'm disclosing them to you. Single agency. That's the other type of relationship that you can have with a realtor. And there's a lot more accountability if your realtor is a single agent to you as the principal. They have to do the first three, which are throughout all of these different statuses: deal honestly and fairly, account for all funds, disclose all known facts that materially affect the value of the property. They have to show skill, care, and diligence, present all offers in a timely manner. There should be full confidentiality. So the confidentiality would be even greater than with the transaction broker. So that should be full confidentiality. Additional terms that are agreed upon. And then we're introduced to 4 more terms that we've never seen anywhere else. And that will be loyalty, confidence, obedience, and full disclosure. So I think and full disclosure here. So these are some additional duties that a real estate agent has to bring to a relationship where there's a single agency relationship: loyalty, confidentiality, obedience, and full disclosure. You must be loyal to that customer. You must protect that customer's interests. Even if that customer is highly motivated to get that property sold, you cannot go tell the other side the level of motivation that your client has to sell that property. You cannot do anything to compromise the integrity of your client receiving the highest and best price for their property. You must remain loyal. You must engage in full confidentiality. You must be obedient, and you must make full disclosure to your customer if you are a single agent. All right. And so I point all these things out because a lot of times customers don't know about the type of agency relationships they're engaging in with realtors. There's more than one type of agency relationship. Yes, we're real estate agents, but we are certain types of agents. And under the classification of agency law, we are indeed special agents because we've been hired for a special task to either help you buy or sell real estate regarding a specific transaction. And that's what makes us special agents. And beyond being a special agent, we can sign various types of agreements with our clients, and that will dictate the type of loyalty level that we have to those clients. Either we're going to represent the transaction and we represent the parties kind of equally in the sense that we're protecting the transaction. It's not really about the parties, but protecting the transaction, making sure the buyer gets what he or she wants, making sure the seller gets what he or she wants. That's called a transaction broker. If it kind of sounds like dual agency, it kind of does. But technically, because there's not full disclosure and full confidentiality, it's really not. But it's kind of like splitting hairs. But transaction brokers are the most typical type of broker relationships that exist. We talked about single agency. That's the greatest type of relationship that exists under Florida law between a principal and an agent. And most of the times, as we're also talking about, the principal is the customer. So I hope some of this made some sense to you. I wanted to kind of go over the different types of agencies so that you can see that they do break down the type of relationship that you can have with your realtor. Understanding that a lot of these rules and regulations are applying only to residential sales. And let's see what else, just as by way of review, understanding that a fiduciary relationship is a very powerful relationship between a principal and an agent. Let's see what else. That dual agency is illegal in the state of Florida as a point of review. That there are, again, several types of agency relationships as we went over. And we talked about the difference between a broker associate and a sales associate. And I think that's going to get us close back to the top of the list. We talked about the differences between universal agent, special agent, and general agent. We talked about those differences. And I think that's basically it. So I hope that this helps you. I definitely didn't want to create any kind of confusion. Just wanted to explain the different type of agency law when it comes to real estate. And my perspective here is based on Florida real estate law, real estate sales, and the law here in Florida. So I know it can be different for other places. So you can compare and contrast notes. And if you need help in this current real estate market, don't hesitate to give me a call. I'm Lisa K. Crawford. real estate broker associate with United Realty Group here in South Florida. Thank you guys. Have a wonderful day. I'm going to sign off for now. And the next time I'm on, we're going to start talking about the actual agreement that you sign when you get ready to list your property. And we're going to go over some of the terminology that's in that listing agreement with your agent. So for now, I'm Lisa K. Crawford signing off. You guys have a wonderful day, and I'll talk with you again soon. Take care.